allow you to talk.
Okay.
I'll dial in and then you should be good.
Great.
So now I'm going to go check the camera.
Okay. Yes.
About here to just into the TV screen.
Okay.
So you've got
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well,
Sounds
it's
good.
already recording.
Okay.
So that's that. On the Zoom. So
Okay. All right.
Introduce you.
Okay. Sounds great.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Let's see if you want to read this first before I say it. But it's not.
Yeah.
Welcome. We are so thankful to have you here, taking the time out of your beautiful ABD day for the performance. And I wanted to introduce you. I'm Heidi. I'm one of and I'm going to introduce Dr. Chrissy to you. Dr. Chrissy Hyder.
Yep.
Is a certified mental performance consultant and a licensed mental health provider at Premier Sports Psychology, right across the street from us. Chrissy was a Division I rower at the University of Michigan, winning an NCAA championship and a U23 World Championship for Team USA.
It's a while ago, but thank you.
Performers of all levels, from amateur, collegiate, professional, and Olympic level athletes. Chrissy also consults with a variety of business organizations and executives to improve leadership and work performance. Chrissy enjoys spending time with her husband, chasing around her toddler, going for walks with her dog, exercising, practicing teaching yoga, and trying any new sport she can get her hands on. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
What you have to tell us.
Awesome. Right. Thank you. So I just want to get an understanding of who's in the room. I know I met a few of you, but I want to raise your hand if you are a competitive athlete in some way, shape, or form. And by competitive, I mean you go out there and you do it. Okay. Okay. All right. Great. Great. All right. Any coaches in the room? Okay. 1, 2. Awesome. Parents. All right. Yeah, you're going to want to listen up. And then anyone that's in a high pressure job where you're needing to perform day in and day out. Awesome. Okay. So my goal, right? It's unbreakable focus, a competitive edge in sports, but I'll talk about it from an athlete lens, but also give you some tangible tips from lots of different performance areas. So if there's any questions, or if you're like, hey, how can I apply this? Or what would this look like in my performance area? Happy to talk through that. There's lots of ways in which, right, there's lots of skills I could talk about today, but I'm going to talk about some of the most prevalent ones that we use when we're working with athletes and performers. All right, let's see here. Okay, yep. So there I am on the screen. Okay, I need a volunteer who is feeling a little courageous today. That's when everyone's like, yeah, no, not too courageous, a little too hot for that. Anyone? You okay? Yes. Awesome. Okay. Everyone else, you're still going to participate. I'm going to have you get out of your seat. So too bad. I want you to, yeah, come on up. I want you to please, there's a stack of papers, the one that's lined paper and a pen. I want you to think about a time when whether it's you were competing in a sport or high pressure situation in your job, when you had a bad performance, right? You choked under pressure. It didn't go as expected. What were some things that came to your head, or, a phrase, something that you might say to yourself? I want you to write it nice and big on that piece of paper. And I'm not going to, I know this is recorded, so I'm not going to share some of the ones that I've heard before, but they get pretty, there's a lot of expletives. So I've seen it all. Just write what would come to mind for you. And if you have a kid, you're a parent, right? What are some things that you've heard maybe on the car ride home when they're really upset too, if you're having trouble thinking about it? So once that's done, I want you to actually crumple up that piece of paper. Yes. And we're going to stand up. It's Annie. Okay, Annie. Okay, great. We'll see. Okay, crowd around. We're going to crowd around Annie here, unless you have a really great arm. Okay. So Annie's goal is and you've probably heard this before, right? We don't want to have any negative thoughts. If you have a negative thought, you gotta block it out, right? Think something positive. Okay, so that's gonna be your goal. When these negative thoughts come your way, I want you to swat them out of the air. Don't let them touch you, okay? And I'll give you a little bit of, get the athletic stance going, get a little stretch, ready to go. Okay, and while you're doing it, just a side note, I want you to hold on to this cup, okay? Don't worry about it. Your number one goal, smack those out of the air. All right, we're not gonna let Annie easy here, right? We're gonna really get after her, okay? All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Smack them. Any more? Okay, that was all right. I don't know if it was elite, but it was all right. Would you like another chance? Okay, that's a good answer. Let's come back up. Doesn't matter which one it is. I want you to grab one of these paper balls. That's all right. Okay, we have another one? I'm going a little loud. All right, so we're gonna give Annie another chance. And she's not afraid of a challenge. We're gonna fill it all the way to the top. Okay, now here's what I want you to do this round. I want you to put all your focus on keeping that water glass still. Okay, if the thoughts come your way, right, just let them hit you. We're not worrying about them. We're putting all of our focus on keeping that still. Okay, we haven't started yet, so you're good. All right, ready? Again, we're warmed up now. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, what do we notice? You can take a sip if you want. It's fresh water. All right, great job, Annie. All right, you can take that. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Before you sit back down, I actually want you to grab one of these paper balls. Doesn't matter which one it is, but we're gonna take it back with us. Oh, is that? Looks like we've got another one on the table here. Perfect. Okay. All right. So what did we notice? Focus, right? When Annie was focused on the task at hand, it didn't matter how many paper balls are coming her way, right? She was locked in and she was able to perform. Okay. And maybe we can even complete the sentence, the phrase. The difference between who wins and loses is what? What do we guess? Yes. And what's it? We're going to go on a loop here. I love it. Okay. But the difference, right, raise your hand if you've heard the difference between those that win and those that lose are those who want it more. Raise your hand if you've heard that. Right? We get told that a lot. And I would completely disagree with that. The difference between who wins and loses is who's focused on the right things at the right time. Okay. Now I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a little bit. I'm a parent to a really young one, another one coming along the way. So this part's just going to get started for me. But we live in a society where there is such an emphasis on you need to win, you need to want it, right? You didn't want it bad enough. And I'm going to give you an example. I have a 5-year-old niece named Gemma, and she just started her first soccer league over the springtime. And this is a league where like the kids they're not coordinated. They'd rather pick dandelions and do cartwheels in the grass, right? And so I showed up and I'm like, all right, this is about to be my future. I'm looking around at all the parents. Okay, this is great. And I get up to the field and I saw this, I assume it was a grandma of one of the opposing team's players. And she goes up to one of that kid's teammates and says, "Are you ready to win today? Are you ready to dominate?" And I had like the worst visceral reaction hearing this. Like, what are we teaching our kids, right? How about, are you ready to work hard and have some fun, right? Because that's really what unlocks that ability to have joy and to work hard without worrying about the result is where those skills really get developed. So I'm going to talk about kind of what that can look like really at any competition level and in any performance setting as well. Okay, so I'm going to take a poll. If you were to guess how many thoughts per day we have, what would you guess? Thousands? What was that? Tens of thousands? Any other guesses? Millions, right? We're on the right track. It's actually a little bit wide. It's anywhere, research shows it's anywhere from like 6,000 to 60,000, right? So we have a ton of thoughts. Now, this is the scary part. What percentage of those do you think are negative? 65, try 85 to 90%, right? And about the same amount is repetitive. So most of the day we're having a ton of negative, repetitive thoughts, right? So in terms of paper balls coming our way, it's going to be a lot of them. Now, why might that be the case? Why do we have such a high percentage of negative, repetitive thoughts? Society, okay. Yep. Any other guesses? Parents, anything else?
Just expect.
Yep. Yeah. And I wonder where that comes from. I wonder where that perfection, where does that come from? I'll tell you, survival, right? Go back to the cave person days. You got to be watching out. If the saber-toothed tiger is going to come after you, you're starting to run out of resources, or else you died, right? Now, the challenge is that our brains haven't evolved to be able to tell the difference between a threat to our life and a threat to our ego. And so it's going to treat, missing the game-winning shot in your basketball game, or not playing a minute and you're riding the bench, like a tiger or bear is coming after you. So with that, what I want you to know is that it's common. It's an automatic thing that it's going to come up for all of us. And that's actually not necessarily the problem. The problem is when we focus on those negative thoughts, when we give them our energy and attention, that it actually creates some challenges. Go ahead and we're going to turn to that next sheet. So I would say the number one skill out of all of them that I could possibly teach the athletes in the performance that I work with is focus. And I think I would probably get some agreement nods here that that's probably the biggest challenge too in our society today. I mean, right, we've got our phones, we're scrolling, and just the challenges the attention challenges that come up for all of us. Phones can be a very helpful thing, but we got to know what we're working with. So focus, number one skill, I would say, training any athletes or performers. So when we're training focus, it starts with self-awareness, right? You're not aware of what you're not aware of, right? We can't change what we're not aware of. So we gotta get aware. And so a tool that we all like to use at Premier Sports Psychology is called the Performance Focus Matrix. And this is backed by research that shows that what we focus on has this chain reaction from it'll dictate the thoughts that we have. The thoughts that we have will impact the emotions that we have. Those emotions will create body sensations. Those body sensations ultimately give us cues and can dictate our behavior and ultimately our performance. A quick example would be, say your focus is you're really present during competition. Some thoughts that might come up would be, hey, I've trained for this. Emotions may include confidence, gratitude, pride, joy. Body sensations, feeling energized, flexible behaviors, smiling, productive self-talk, open body posture, performance is optimal. But we just learned that this isn't the automatic response most of the time. This isn't the most common. But let's get a chance to kind of pause and think through some examples for yourself. So I want you to start with that top one. I guess I lost focus here trying to type focus. But I want you to think about a time when you have performed poorly, right? This could be in your job. It could be maybe even a moment where you lost it as a parent. It could be you had a challenging conversation with a spouse that didn't go the way you wanted to. Or it could be you in your competition, or thinking about too if one of your kids was competing or your athletes. So what would be an example of when there's a poor performance, what are you focused on? What are some thoughts that come up? Feelings, sensations, behaviors. I was kind of digging it, but once you finish with that one, we'll do it for when you had a great performance. What were you focused on? How did that impact your thoughts, feelings, sensations, behaviors? I'll give you about another 30 seconds or so. Okay. So you probably didn't think this was going to be so interactive. You're going to sit back and listen tonight. I want you to just turn to the person or people around you and talk through, what did you notice? What's the difference between when you perform poorly versus when you perform well? What were you focused on, and how did that kind of impact that chain reaction? All right. I hate to cut off a good discussion. I'd love to hear an example or two. What came up? What did we notice?
That like really get stuck in your thoughts, whether you're well or performing poorly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can you give an example of what were some thoughts that came up for you?
Well, performing poorly, tend to think you can do better, how to do that, get a better practice. But even when you're performing well, like you're kind of giving yourself affirmation, but still like negative thoughts try to creep in.
And creep in as well. Yeah. So sometimes there's some mental habits there. I think we get told to focus on our thoughts a lot. And I'm not saying, yeah, we're robots and it doesn't matter what you think, but it is a real noticing that, hey, that's a focus point for a lot of us. And I'll give some cues on some things to how to direct your focus instead. Okay, any other thoughts? I was hearing some really great discussion. How about this table over here? We've got a good listening ear.
Presence. And things go well when you're focused or present in the situation.
Yeah.
Or knowing why you're there.
Yeah, kind of getting locked in. Yeah. So if you're focused on helpful things, tends to take care of itself, tends to go well, right? And what we focus on is something that we can train. I want to show you, I should have animated this next slide, because there's a lot of information, but we'll take it one by one and kind of pull pieces from it. But the second part of training focus, right, starts with self-awareness. What's happening? What's the impact of it on me? And then also, can I be intentional with my attention, right? Where is my energy and attention going? And when I have 99% of the time when I do this activity with athletes, the same common themes come up of things that they're focused on when they're performing poorly versus when they have a great performance. So let's see how this might align with what you all came up with. I'll come back to that. So poor performance. Man, the double screens really feels like I've got four things to work with. Okay, so for poor performance, most of the time, right, we're worried about the results. And Aaron's gonna think, I'm letting my teammates down, past mistakes, really getting fixated on that, have a hard time letting go of it. Feels productive to keep thinking about it, but again, it's already happened. You can't do anything about it. The what ifs, future worries, future scenarios. And sometimes too, I think that's also when you have had a really good performance and we linger there a little bit too long and start to think, oh yeah, well, all these wonderful things are going to happen. And it takes you kind of out of the moment. Focusing on the uncontrollables, all the things above listed are uncontrollables. There tends to be a quality of fear or threat, which we know is natural. But again, having awareness of it allows us to be able to separate to some degree. And then having an internal focus. And what I mean by that, it's, oh, am I feeling tired? Or, oh, that was so bad. And kind of getting lost in the thoughts takes us away from the moment. Versus great performance, focus on the process. I'll tell the athletes and performers I work with time and time again, you can really want a result. You can be invested like, yes, I want to win, or yes, I want to have a double tonight. That's great. But how? How are you going to do that? If you can redirect your focus to the process of it, that's when the result takes care of itself, or you get the most accurate result for what you're capable of that day and get some really great learning data points as well, versus I'm worried about the results. I'm actually going to start to pull my effort away and back away from it so that I can sort of a defensive mechanism to say, well, I didn't give it my full effort. So I'm not really going to attach myself to that result. But secretly, I'm actually thinking about it all the time. So it helps us to stay in the moments, keep the effort high, taking it one task at a time, right? Being present in the moment. That's the only thing that we have control over. So some key things for that can be, well, I'll talk about that in a second, but tuning into your 5 senses really helps with that. So let's say you're out on the golf course and you're getting in your head. I'm going to smell the grass. I'm going to feel the ground underneath my feet. I'm going to feel the grip of my club. Or let's say you're a surgeon, right? I'm feeling the scalpel in my hand. I'm feeling the mask over my face. I'm sitting in my chair. I've got my instruments. Being able to be present, focusing on the controllables. What's the next action I need to take? Having fun. Again, this comes back to my grandma story. Gosh, if we're not having fun, or at least, and by fun, I don't mean like, yay, I'm so entertained, but it's that satisfaction of growing and developing that's so, God, just like satiating. So important to focus in on that. And then also having an external focus. So looking outwards, let's say you're a basketball player dribbling down the court, or you're running back on defense, you're scanning, your eyes are up, you're focused on, really the challenge at hand. So these are, if we're thinking about, okay, what do I focus on? Picking the things that fall into these categories. So I would recommend, if you're a parent having a conversation with an athlete or a coach, you're asking questions to help guide the focus there. So, hey, like, what did you work on today? What are you most proud of? Where did you put the most effort, right? Things like that versus did you win? Did you lose? How did so-and-so do? If you are a coach, right, you're asking about effort, you're asking them, getting involved in the process. So, hey, that tee shot didn't go well for you. What adjustments would you make? Why was that? What happened? And really getting them to think about the why, the how, talking about that, because I think that gives a sense of, hey, I can control that. It wasn't just, oh, that was bad, and I move on. So keeping them in the moment. There's 3 things that focus is really dictated by. Eye gaze. So what are you looking at? Okay. Is it that your head's down on the ground, or you're like scrolling in your phone because you're upset about something, or are you making eye contact? If you're in a sport where there's a ball moving, right? Is your gaze following it? Are you locked in on your target? That's going to where you're looking is going to really dictate where you're focusing. The second would be communication. So what are you talking about? Both to yourself, what are those thoughts that are going in through your head, but also what are you saying to others? Golf is on the top of my mind because it's such a big sport right now, especially for the high schoolers. The collegiate athletes are just wrapping up. But the conversations that happen in the golf carts, or who they're playing with, are really interesting. Sometimes it's trying to distract themselves and not think about the round. Hey, what are you doing this weekend? Or literally anything else. And although there might be a temporary relief of, oh, okay, I'm not thinking about it, the focus is going there. And so you either have to be really intentional about refocusing when it's your next shot by doing some routines or things like that. But just being mindful of that. In a workspace, right? How much are we complaining to coworkers? Right? I know I do that too sometimes, right? After a long day, you just want to let it out. But again, that's dictating where your focus and attention is going. Are you celebrating success? Are you celebrating high effort? And then lastly, where are you putting your energy and attention? Let's say that I am basketball player who really struggles to dribble with my left hand. And I'm thinking of the Wolves tonight. Really struggles to go left. And so I avoid it in practice and I don't work on it. Well, how do you expect to be focused in that if you're not putting your effort towards it? So where we're putting our efforts is also going to help dictate focus. I want to give one. Well, okay. So what I really want to leave you with thinking about is where being intentional, anticipating challenges. Where do you want to put your focus? What's going to be helpful? Whether it's for yourself or you're having a conversation with others, planning for that. Okay, how if I focus on something, it doesn't need to necessarily be positive, but productive, task-oriented, right? We had Annie with the water cup. She wasn't like, yeah, I can do this. I'm the best. I'm going to keep this water still like no one's ever done it before. No, she's just neutral, locked in on the task at hand. That can be enough in terms of what we're focusing on. So picking things that you want to focus on ahead of time helps to set the scene, set the tone. I know we're going to be talking next about some biofeedback, neurofeedback, but I wanted to give an example of a really tangible technique that we teach and also use technology with. And this is called the quiet eye technique. This is great for sports where there is, and I think just like tasks, right? I don't know, I keep thinking of surgeon, but if you're needing to be really precise in your movements, that holding your gaze for about 1.2 seconds, locking in on your target, improves accuracy in your performance. One of my favorite party tricks is when I'm watching an NBA or any basketball game on TV, when they're getting up to the free throw line, watching the player's eyes. And I have like a pretty like 90% success rate, maybe not that high, but pretty high success rate of knowing if the ball is going to go in based on what their eyes are doing. Because players that are rush it, or if they hold it for too long, tend to miss. So if you're watching the Wolves game tonight, or getting the last bit of the Lynx game tonight too, watch the eyes, right? So if you're a golf coach, you're locking in on the target, like taking a breath, then look down, take your putt, right? Yeah, lots of different sports where we're looking at the accuracy. And so a cool thing that we're doing with some of the teams we're working with now are using these eye tracking glasses. This pair is from Toby. They do a ton of research in consumer spaces, sports, medical fields. They do a lot of research in hospitals as well, where they're able to see, lots of things, but the focal points of where you're looking, the duration of how long you're looking at it, also the your how dilated your pupil gets to indicate stress. So we might do some like HRV training to help with that as well. But really cool technology. It's a little, if you're a coach and you're thinking, I want to get this for my athletes, this one is pretty pricey. There's some other ones that are a little bit less so, but we're using it to see, okay, this player who has a 90% free throw accuracy, where are they looking? Let's get some markers on that. We'll put it on a screen and then work with somebody who struggles. Maybe they're like 60, 70% from the free throw line. Where are they looking for how long? Things like that. Compare the two and then let the athlete see, okay, here's where it should be looking. And then we'll go back, have them take more free throws locked in on that target. Are they making that change? Are they training it? So pretty cool focus, training strategy. And there's a lot to do with that. But that is all I have for y'all today. I'm happy to answer any questions. Or we'll turn it over to our friends here as well. Yeah. Yeah. So our consulting firm, most of our providers also are licensed mental health clinicians. So we'll see, there's clients who have been in like really traumatic car crashes and they're trying to, their performance thing is, hey, I'm getting back into my car today and driving. It could be We see a lot of parents. I know myself, I work with a couple of musical theater performers. Another subset of our group also works with business executives, taking some of the concepts from the performance world that we know work and into the executive space. So there's quite a variety. Never boring over at Premier. Anything else? Yeah. You don't want to know. Those glasses are like $25,000. We don't buy them. We don't have that kind of budget, but some of the groups we work with, they're really invested in that. Yeah. With those glasses? I mean, yeah. If you need somebody to help you too, you let me know. Yeah, so you can, but they better give me a little cut of the commission if I sell this. There's multiple, you can use them for multiple, like as one pair of glasses, you can use endless amounts of clients that you're working with. Yeah.
Okay, let's see if that's doing it. So is that now you're hearing it, Heidi? You should be able to hear it. Okay. So thank you, Heidi. Be terrible if all of the people were just watching me mime. I'm not sure a lot of this translates. It's not my thing. So mechanism-based approach. And so we tend to think this way, and what we do is we look very much at mechanisms. And I'm going to talk a little bit tonight. Fran is going to talk a bit more about the mechanisms that we see in the brain. And when those mechanisms aren't working right, part of our job is to get it to work the way it's supposed to. And what we see is when the mechanism is operating as it should, the things we call symptoms go away. Yeah. So another thing about the brain that is emerging and really becoming quite popular across the field of neuropsychology, neurophysiology is this idea of predictive processing. So what it is saying is we all think that our brain is kind of thinking about what is happening, like our brain is responding to the world as the world is coming to us, right? That's the model we all kind of operate on. But what neuroscience is telling us now is that actually is not the case, that our brain is always taking in the information around us, predicting what is going to happen, and then comparing that to reality. So we already have an idea before, right? So your brain is right now is predicting the next thing that's going to come out of my mouth, right? You already knew that. I didn't have to say that. So we're all the time doing that, is we're making up the world and then having an expectation of that's what we're going to find. So, and when it doesn't, that's a mismatch, right? So it's a prediction error. That's what the brain spends a lot of time doing, is actually working on prediction errors. How well do I predict the world? Make that error smaller and smaller and smaller so that my prediction becomes more and more accurate, and I function on the base of what I think reality is, not on what reality is. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that from one of our top neuroscientists.
Joining us today is Dr. Lisa Feldman-Barrett. Lisa is among the top 1% most cited scientists in the world for her revolutionary research in psychology as well as neuroscience. She is a University Distinguished Professor of Psychology at Northeastern University, with appointments at Harvard Medical School and Massachusetts General.
That is the actual one. So a lot of information packed in there, but the piece about prediction. Another part that I think it gets overlooked is we think about the brain in relation to our thinking, our cognition, our perception. But we often forget that the brain runs everything. So it's running our physiology. So when we talk about peak performance, electrolyte balance, blood sugar balance, thermoregulation, oxygen carbon dioxide mix, all of that is being run by the brain. So if the brain isn't functioning optimally, then our body can't function optimally, right? So one of the best places that people who are kind of at an elite level of training, they often can't get that much more out of training harder, their body harder, right? But what we can do is by optimizing the brain, we can give them a greater percentage of improvement over that same amount of time invested in training the body. Along the lines of what he was talking about. So here's a look of how we look at overall network function. Right. So again, we do look very specifically at very small areas of the brain and how they're talking to their neighbors, but also we take this network perspective. And so what I want to do is talk a little bit about like kind of how what we do from the brain kind of maps onto a little bit of what Chrissy was talking about in her matrix. So we might say here, we have some networks. So we talked about like if attention is too internal, right? So our ventral ventral attention network, if it's too internal, right, that's going to disrupt our focus. If our default mode, so internal mind wandering, paying too much attention to kind of the inner thoughts of what's going on, that also is going to interrupt in our focus. If we're down here, salience, what's important for us to pay attention to? So what's directing the mechanism of focus? So if our salience network is highly dysregulated, we're going to have a hard time keeping our focus on something because the very mechanism is not working well. Mood, so relative to emotions, so our mood network, if it's highly dysregulated, as it is for this person, they're going to have a difficult time around the emotional component, right? So for us, we're looking at how do these different functions of the brain factor into that overall metric. And so Chrissy was taking us through some exercises on how to do it, but just like working out, like if you're going to the gym and you're going to lift weights, but you've got a bad knee, that's going to affect your ability to benefit from the activity of lifting weights, right? So lifting weights is still 100% good thing to do as an elite athlete, but if you're injured and you can't do it, you can't get the benefit. So we would take a similar approach here, is if you have a sprained salience network, you can't do some of the work you need to do to take advantage of the psychological side because your brain can't show up to the gym. Yep. So here, take another look. So this is microstate dynamics, and it gives us a metric again here that's similar but different. It's a functional side, and how that factors in and where we might see dysregulation here interfering in our ability to participate in part of the performance metric. And then here, this is a lot of information, but so we have a core circuit in the brain, anterior, posterior cingulate, that takes information from the body, roughly what we call emotion, brings it up into the brain, translated it into feeling. That goes to the front of the brain, to the anterior cingulate, where it mixes in with the frontal lobes and the executive network for how do I think about how I feel. So if that core circuit isn't working well, then information, coming from the body is we're going to have dysregulated information, going to have dysregulated emotion information coming in. That's going to impact kind of our thinking. So we heard some comments, people saying that when they've noticed that even when they're focused, that they'll have negative thoughts sneaking in, right? This is part of the underpinning of that. When this core circuit isn't running well, then it's going to be throwing a lot of dust in the air that then you're trying to weed out. But if we regulate this circuit, there's less dust in the air, less work to be done on the focus generation side. Okay, and similarly here, this is heart rate variability. We're going to see a little bit of here biofeedback. And so if the autonomic nervous system, we were just looking at the central nervous system, the brain, but if the autonomic nervous system is dysregulated, we'll see similarly, and roughly mapped all of that into this idea of emotion. As a way as this interoceptive information that is flooding into the brain all the time. It is our largest source of input to the brain, is information coming up from the body. So if the body is highly dysregulated, then the task of creating and sustaining focus is going to be much more challenged than if we can get that body to settle down and sending less disruptive information into the performance flow. So Brian's going to step in and tell you now in a little bit more detail how we get the information and use that information.
Okay, so my job is to talk with you about kind of all of what Guy was talking about, how we kind of bring that into the work that we do with our actual clients. So thought it might be a nice way to do this, to kind of walk you through what we do in the clinic through the lens of a client. So I want you to meet Joey T. Joey gave us permission to do this, so I'm not violating confidentiality. Joey is a professional disc golfer, and so he tours, does the tours in the United States, goes over, does the European tours. Contacted our clinic in January, said, I'm interested in doing this. He identified some areas that he wanted to work on, specifically wanted to, the words he used is improve his mental game, right? And identified that he has some real difficulties with focus, has some history of ADHD, and said, could we get the 40 sessions in a month? And so we did an intensive with him, and we actually had 50 sessions in 5 weeks. I'm going to talk with you a little bit about how we trained Joey and kind of bring you through his process as we go. So when somebody comes into the clinic, we do neuroimaging. That's where we start. We want to do exactly what Guy said, which is to pinpoint what is going on in that individual's brain that may be interfering with their performance, right? And so we do this through quantitative EEG. So it's EEG-based brain mapping that we do that gives us all kinds of information. Guy was talking with you a little bit about the type of information we might get, from very kind of more broad information to very specific about what Brodmann area might be dysregulated, or as Guy said, we look a lot at networks as well. So we did this with Joey. We identified what was going on with Joey, and not surprising to find out that Guy was talking about the cingulate, right? The anterior and posterior. Joey had dysregulation in both of those areas, definitely seeming to have some impact on him, because lo and behold, as we started training, it became very clear the level of anxiety that was there as well. That was a big piece of what was happening with him and his mental game, right? He was attributing it all to focus, and certainly focus was part of it, but part of what was getting in the way was anxiety. So we, after doing the analysis, getting all of the information that we get from that, which is a lot of information, we decided on doing just neurofeedback. Sometimes we do neurostimulation as well and kind of do it in combination. Joey just wanted to do neurofeedback, so I said, okay, we're just doing neurofeedback. So we did that, 50 sessions. He came in morning and evening, 5 days a week, sometimes on Saturday, and we got his training in. We also did a lot of heart rate variability, and you're going to get to see the neurofeedback and the heart rate variability in action in just a few minutes. And so we spent a lot of time in session. So when Joey first started training, his heart rate variability, like his autonomic nervous system metrics, were horrible. Just everything was messed up. About 3/4 of the way through his training, that started to have a big shift and improve. And that was because he was practicing outside of the training time as well. And then we also added audiovisual entrainment into the mix, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. What we did with the AVE was we used it in clinic. So oftentimes during a session, we would spend maybe the first 5 to 10 minutes of the session having him run a protocol and doing visualization. He struggled a lot with, there were certain holes on certain courses that would get him. And so now he had this history, right? And his brain was predicting when he went to, this course, that when he got to this hole, he was going to blow it, right? He also had a pattern of being really good until it came to the big match, right? The big game, and then he would blow it. It's interesting because this guy was talking, I remembered one of the things Joey said to me when the day I was doing his brain mapping was, he said, I have this issue with blowing it for the big tournaments, right? I don't know what happens, he said, but I have a feeling it's because I grew up in Minnesota. I love sports. I've watched Minnesota sports, and they blow it all the time. And we chuckled about it at the time, but there's some truth to that idea that his brain just was predicting, I'm a Minnesotan, I blow it at the end, right? And so fingers crossed that's going to change for Joey. And then he also used audiovisual entrainment at home. He was like the ideal client because he was extremely motivated and he practiced it all the time. You know, we tell clients, please do this daily, once or twice a day. Joey did it. He also did the visualization along with it at home, which I think made a big difference for him. So this is what we did, neurofeedback. We're going to tell you about neurofeedback when we show you, so I'm not even going to talk about it now just because of the sake of time. We also do neurostimulation in the clinic. I'll just push this one so you can see it happening there on the screen. Literally, this is kind of like a treatment paradigm, whereas neurofeedback is a learning paradigm. You know, we're teaching the brain to behave differently for the long run. This is more of a treatment paradigm that can kind of nudge the brain, maybe give it a little bit of a jump start. And so oftentimes in clinic, if it's indicated by the QEEG analysis, we will do some neurostimulation with a client maybe at the beginning and then move into neurofeedback, or sometimes we're doing one or the other and not combining them. We add in heart rate variability. We're going to talk about that too when we do the demonstration. So I'm not going to say much about it right now, just for the sake of time. And then this is the information on audiovisual entrainment as well. And so what I love about audiovisual entrainment is that it is like this, I feel like it's this wonder device that can be used. It's very easy to use. It's really practical. It travels well, even to Costa Rica. And it just has a, like everybody can use it. And it's got these built-in protocols. You don't need a brain mapping to use an AVE. You don't need a professional to show you how to use it. You literally can use it. And it's got these wonderful benefits over here of, you know, increasing blood flow, creating, you know, getting the brain to move into particular states, that sort of thing. When we're done here tonight, if you've not tried an audiovisual entrainment device, stop back here and try one. You'll wonder why you never tried it before. So Joey, so we did all of this training with him, right? And with the goal of him improving his mental game, and he also wanted to understand his ADHD better. Joey is a thinker, by the way. Sometimes we don't remember that athletes are deep thinkers too sometimes. And that was good for him and kind of to his detriment at times too, because he would get caught in thinking a lot. But as a result of the training that he did with us, he had improved focus. So how did he know this? Because he was not doing disc golf tournaments at that time, right? He was on, you know, break from that. What Joey does in the off season to help with, you know, his skill of focus is he throws darts. And he sent me a video one day of him, and I would love to play it for you, but it's got a lot of excited expletives in it. He was really happy about what was happening. So he had this particular thing that he would do with darts where he was hitting for, not a dart, for 19s and 20s or something. Like he just had something where that was his specific focus. It's that little thin line around that is really hard to hit. And he'd throw it and throw it and throw it. And so this video, he's taken this video and he's like, oh my God. Like his focus was just on, right? So that was an indication to him that, yep, focus is improving. Hopefully that's going to translate to the game, right? The other area he noticed big change in had to do with, we saw it in clinic with his autonomics regulating, like his HRV. You'll see it when we do the demo. It just started to actually just look pretty. It looked, you know, it stopped being chaotic, and it was just looking like a really well-regulated autonomic nervous system. And as a result of all of the improvement that was happening, he started to be able to manage stress differently. And this one, he had no idea was going to be a benefit. And I think for him, in the long run, that's going to be far more beneficial for him than the improved focus. And I'll tell you why in just a second. The way he started to notice his stress being decreased there were several things, but the thing that stuck out for him the most was he and his girlfriend played chess. She lives in Estonia. He lives in Minnesota when in the off season. So they would play chess online together, but they would time. Okay, they would time their moves, right? And he got really nervous every time the timer went off. And what he started to notice is he stopped feeling nervous when the timer hit, and then he just played chess, right? And didn't feel very distressed about that. And then so as that started to happen, he also noticed some impulse control, and he's still got room to grow on this one, but the impulse control started to improve for him as well. This quote from Joey about how neurofeedback, has helped him. So Joey and I stay in touch, and he's on tour right now and getting ready to go over to the European tour in a month. He unfortunately has not been in any one of the tournaments he's been traveling around with because he got a physical injury, actually has a cracked vertebrae that is healing. And so he's not been able to play. And this was a guy who was so excited to go back because he finally felt like, oh my God, I've got this, right? And so he's had to deal with the disappointment of that. And when we have conversation, he says, I can't believe how I'm dealing with this. If this was a year ago, my whole world would have fallen apart. But he has capacity now because his brain and autonomic nervous system are functioning well to be able to manage that very differently. We're still hoping he's going to play in a tournament, and I secretly just want that to happen because I'm curious to see what's going to happen with that, when he hits that particular tournament where he gets nervous about it. So that gives you kind of an idea of how we work with somebody to help them change what's happening in the brain and in the body in a way that allows them to perform at their peak, whether they're athletes or anybody else, all of the people that Chrissy was mentioning that come in to get help. Okay, so I think we can move on to the demo. So I'm not sure what has to happen here. For those of you that are on Zoom, we are just getting the neurofeedback to show up on the screen. So we're just taking a second to get that hooked up. It's kind of intimate, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Folks.
Okay. All right. So first of all, thank you, Allie, for sharing your beautiful brain with all of us here. We appreciate it. So this is Allie's brain. Right now, we're looking at her EEG. So every one of these lines is correlated with one of the sensors on her EEG cap there. We're noticing over here something we call head maps that are showing us, like, compared to the normative database, how's Allie's brain doing in the moment. You're looking pretty nice there. And so we're gonna, in a second, Adam, can you pull the square up? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And then, okay, so we are training a network. I don't know what network you chose. Reward network for Allie right now. And this shows us here how many metrics of dysregulation are in that particular network. So 479 metrics. And we're going to start training her at a particular threshold level with the goal of being able to move that down closer and closer to the norm. Right now, it's set at 5 standard deviations above the norm. And so we'll see where that's at for Allie once we actually set the training in action. We can see over here different Brodmann areas that are implicated in this particular network as well. Do you want to go ahead and launch her? You ready to fly? There we go. Okay. So right now, what Allie is doing is sitting here being a cheerleader while her brain flies this object, right? While her, and so the goal of the video game that you see is for the bat to fly through the target. Allie really can't think that into happening. She can't move her head left or right to make it move in the right direction. Literally what's happening right now is Allie's brainwave information is getting fed into a computer that has a database of normative brains. and it's being compared to them. And whenever her brain starts to behave similarly to the database, yes, just like right on cue. Oh my God, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so that's what happens, right? Is it goes through the hoop and then you saw it flip over. So there's a visual stimulus and you heard the swoosh sound, auditory stimulus. That stimuli is what is reinforcing for the brain. So remember, we're not training her mind, we're training her brain. Brains like stimuli. And so we're just operantly conditioning Allie's brain to behave more like the normative database. What you can see over here is this line right here is the metrics of dysregulation. So we can watch that. So you can see right now, 5 standard deviations above the norm. She's got some that are going above that as well. And so as we're training, that's part of what we're watching, is to see how her brain is responding with the goal of this regulating so that this gets lower and lower and we have, less dysregulation up higher. And then the head maps, as I mentioned, we're watching them to see how she's doing relative to the normative database. And so anytime the brain turns something other than green, that's either it's behaving standard, like there's too much or too little of that particular frequency at that particular time. Periodically, you'll notice red up in the frontal. If Allie blinks, will you blink on purpose? See what happens. Yeah, you see? Yeah, that's not actually EEG, that's her muscle. And so one of the things we do with clients is work with them frequently to kind of just relax eyes and maybe lessen the blink a bit. Anything else? Yeah. Questions about this part before we switch up the HRV, or while we're switching up to the HRV? Any questions about the neurofeedback process or what Allie's experiencing?
What's the highest?
Is Connor still? Yeah, we have a kid who worked really hard to get the high score, and beat the older kid who had worked really hard to get the score. We had a gentleman that we trained who really wanted to be the high scorer and was for quite a while. And then this kid came up and said to Guy, I want to be the high scorer. And so they worked on that and he got there. I don't know what the score was, but yeah. And so you can see, like, if Allie starts going through that hoop too much, then Adam's going to say, this is getting too easy. We got to have the brain learn a bit more. And he's going to lower this threshold so that the brain has to work a little bit harder, right? And that's that process of just regulating it that way. I did. Yep, 479. Yep. Okay. Other questions about this? Otherwise, do you want to talk about the HRV? Yep, those are the number of metrics in that particular network that are dysregulated, and they will be unique to you or the client or that. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So heart rate variability, more broadly, is biometrics. We can take in like as many as 10 different biometrics. So things like heart rate, peripheral temperature, blood volume pulse, so the amount of blood flowing, like the volume of blood flowing through the peripheral arteries, skin conductivity. So we get a number of metrics that we can pull in that are a window into how is the autonomic nervous system working. So a lot of times I talk about heart rate variability. So that's what we see up here, HRV, heart rate variability. The scale here is arbitrary. It means something to us. There's a standard number, SDNN, but I will say, like on our system, something around 15 is good, right? Just for kind of an average person, around 15, they're actually doing really well. Joey, who we heard about, Joey hangs out around 50, which is really high. Like that's incredibly impressive. I have other elite athletes who maybe top out at 30. So he's got a combination of conditioning, youth, which is a big factor in heart rate variability. So he's young, but clearly his system optimized to be able to get up to a 50 on our system for an HRV. That'd be an SDNN of about 100. I mean, that's fantastic. So we can look at that. So it's a window into the autonomic nervous system. How well is our body regulating our function? So think thermostat in your house, right? So your thermostat runs your air conditioning and your furnace, and it keeps your house at a temperature that is comfortable for you. So let's say you set your thermostat at 72. You want it to stay plus or minus, and most thermostats are set at a 2-degree tolerance, so plus or minus 2 degrees. But imagine if your thermostat had the tolerance at plus or minus 10. So you set it at 72, and it would heat all the way up to 82 and cool all the way down to 62, right? Like that would not make for a very comfortable house to be in. You'd be putting layers on, taking layers off, right? But also your furnace would be running really hard to get the house that hot. And then your air conditioning would be running really hard to get it cooled down again, right? And so now you're working your furnace and your air conditioning much harder than they need to, and the environment is not optimal, right? That's what happens in an autonomic nervous system when it's dysregulated. But what it's doing is that's your heart, your liver, your spleen, your kidneys. Everything is being run in this big window, back and forth, back and forth. And basically, what we know from longevity study now is that's aging, right? What is the process of aging? Is the autonomic nervous system getting less and less specific, that tolerance getting bigger and bigger and bigger, organ systems running less and less efficiently, less and less well, and that is the process of aging. So one of the things we get to look at here is how well is somebody's system functioning, and bring them back into a tighter control of their autonomic nervous system, which is going to lead to better performance for our athletes, but also better health over a life course, right? Heart rate variability is our best predictor of all-cause mortality. So if somebody with a low HRV, you can know a couple of things about them. They're going to die younger than they should, and they're going to have more health issues than they would if they had a higher heart rate variability, right? Great statistics to show that. So this is an important part of what we do, is we don't want to be trying to regulate the brain if it's a body problem, and vice versa. We don't want to be regulating the body if it's a brain problem. So by looking at the central nervous system and the autonomic nervous system, we can kind of work both ends. Any questions? Okay. So I think we will call it here. Yep, Fran, was there anything else yet? I think we'll call it here yet. Yep. Are they arbitrary? Well, I just said this particular scale doesn't map onto the universal number for HRV, which is SDNN, to statistical calculation, but it's a derivation of SDNN. Well, again, the line is just set as a training line. So, like right now, you're kind of hanging out around 5. So 5, not great. We would like to see somebody kind of sitting at rest. So big thing is at rest. Yeah, I mean, if you were hanging around 15, that would be fantastic. But if let's say your average is 5, then 7 would be an improvement. Like you would feel the move from 5 to 7 would register in your physiology. You would be kind of like, wow, that feels awesome. So 5 to 10 is almost unimaginable to the experience of that. 5 to 15 equally so. But yes, we'd like to see the average person doing what you're doing, just sitting, doing nothing, be hanging out at about a heart rate variability of 15. Yep. Yeah, sure. So I don't know, Adam, can you, pull up, I kind of like, you could do the balloons or just a line pacer and audio. That's on yours. Can you just turn the volume down? So what we're going to have you do is just follow that line. Inhale as it goes up, exhale as it goes down. Yep. So just kind of match your inhale and exhale there. And then over here, we'll see. So this would be like one of 1,000 things that we might do, is just a simple, give them a visual breath pacer, let them watch some of their statistics, as hopefully what happens as she synchronizes with the pacer, that autonomic nervous system starts to optimize. But we also gamify it. You can play Pac-Man or do any kinds of things. When we work with athletes, we'll have them bring in a video. Can you turn that down more? Yeah, exactly. So like for Joey, we could have him bring in a video of the course that was so stressful for him, or the hole in the course that was so stressful for him. Then put the video up on the screen and put his metrics up on the screen and have him watching the video that is the stressor. And then he gets feedback in a number of ways. We can have the video kind of stop or darken as the feedback to him. And as he regulates his autonomic nervous system, the video plays, expands, brightens. So we can gamify it like that, or we can just simply give somebody just the raw data. And I actually find that for a lot of people, this works better. Like taking it out of the gamification and just letting their brain see exactly what it's doing and what it needs to do, change can come immediately. And again, keeping in mind, like you doing this, but anybody who's doing this has no idea how to do this, right? Like heart rate variability is the beat to beat difference in timing between your heartbeat. Right, so your heart shouldn't beat like a metronome. You shouldn't beat once every second, like a beat of, average heart rate of 60 beats per minute, 1 beat every second. Right, that's not good. That's a metronome. You want it to have like a quarter second, half second, 3/4 second, quarter second, fifth. It should be variable, and that variability should be tuned into your physiological need. So, what does your system need? In your heart and your breathing and everything, but in this case, we're looking at the heart, should be adjusting moment to moment with the physiological need, right? That's how it promotes health and well-being or takes away from health and well-being if it isn't doing that. So we don't have, like most people don't have conscious control of this. And you would have no idea where to go looking if I said, like, change your heart rate variability. Like, point me in a direction, give me a cue, give me an exercise to do. But your brain, in a matter of minutes, with the feedback, can start doing it. Like it just figures it out. Yeah. Okay. So we'll stop there. And I want to say thank you to Chrissy and your whole team over there. But thank you for coming. We'll totally appreciate that. And everybody here, thank you for making time to come tonight. If you want to do audiovisual entrainment sessions, or we'll be around to answer questions. Thank you.